Good day and welcome to everyone joining us. Welcome to today's X-Talks webinar. Today's talk is entitled Wearable Sensors in Clinical Trials, Data System Integrity Considerations. My name is Aisha Rashid and I'll be your X-Talks host for today. Today's webinar will run for approximately 60 minutes. This presentation includes a Q&A session with our speakers. This webinar is designed to be interactive and webinars work best when you're involved. So please feel free to submit questions and comments for our speakers throughout the presentation using the questions chat box, and we'll try to attend to your questions during the Q&A session. This chat box is located in the control panel on the right-hand side of your screen. If you require any assistance, please contact me at any time by sending a message using this chat panel. At this time, all participants are in listen-only mode. Please note that this event will be recorded and made available for streaming on xtalks.com. At this point, I'd like to thank VivoSense, who developed the content for this presentation. VivoSense Inc. develops and validates real-world digital clinical measures and provides end-to-end services and solutions for their delivery in clinical trials. The company's hypothesis-driven framework provides analytical and clinical validation, leading to FDA approval. VivoSense delivers novel digital biomarkers from wearable sensor data, which constitute primary and secondary clinical endpoints in regulated international pharmaceutical trials. VivoSense is dedicated to improving patient clinical research and care. And now it's a pleasure for me to introduce our speakers for today's event. Dudley Tabakin is co-founder and chief product officer at VivoSense, with a dedication to delivering quality data from digital health technologies in clinical trials. With more than 25 years of experience in the biomechanics and wearable technology industries, Dudley understands the pivotal role of accurate and reliable data in driving meaningful insights. This steadfast commitment to excellence has positioned VivoSense as a trusted leader in the development of novel digital measures, empowering clinicians and researchers alike with unparalleled access to precise and actionable data for improving patient outcomes and advancing research. Stan Rogiers joined argenx in June 2022 as head data integrations and standards data management. argenx is a fast-moving and growing biotech company. Stan has over 20 years of experience both at CRO, pharma industry, and technology. He worked for 5 years at SGS Life Sciences, a CRO, 10 years within Johnson & Johnson Company, and 7 years at the SAS or SAS Institute as an analytics leader before moving to argenx. Stan is also a member of the European CDISC Coordinating Committee, E3C. Anders Stromberg heads a business entity within Sony that provides connected solutions leveraging 4G, 5G IoT communication technology for application areas such as mobile health and safety. The vision is to be a facilitator and frontrunner for next-generation digital biomarker solutions. Anders has a background from the medtech industry and has worked in several major companies, among them Hewlett-Packard, Siemens, and HemoQ. Anders also has experience from the telecom and cybersecurity industry, where he has worked in several startup companies providing application platforms, application and consulting since 2000. Anders has held management functions within business development, R&D, and product management. The Health Solution Division was established in 2019 as a result from an innovation competition within Sony and is driven by Anders. With over 2 decades of experience in healthcare technology and software engineering, Sandeep Bhardi serves as the head of engineering at VivoSense. Sandeep is driving the strategic design and development of an innovative, scalable, and highly secure platform utilizing wearable sensors to help derive novel digital clinical endpoints. His expertise lies in spearheading large-scale analysis of wearable data for biomarkers, facilitating advanced scientific data analysis, and engineering essential tools for the VivoSense science team to derive digital endpoints. Prior to his role at VivoSense, Sandeep held pivotal positions at renowned organizations such as Lytix, Tandem Diabetes Care, Thermo Fisher Scientific, and Qualcomm. And now, before we begin the presentation, we have a poll question for our audience to interact with in real time, and that question should be appearing on your screen now. So we would greatly appreciate if our audience could participate by voting on this poll question. And the poll question that we have for you is, what do you believe are the limitations of existing DHT platforms? And the options that you can choose from include too many platforms to learn and use, data is siloed and not easily used, data quality is unknown and may be suspect, data is difficult to interpret, or all of the above. Once again, the question we have for you is, what do you believe are the limitations of existing DHT platforms? So please take a moment to vote on this poll question. Once again, your participation is greatly appreciated. I can see that the votes are indeed coming in, so thank you very much. And we'll take a look at the results of the poll in just a moment. Once again, the question is, what do you believe are the limitations of existing DHT platforms? Okay, so I'll give our audience just a couple of more seconds to get their votes in before I close up the poll and share the results. Okay, it looks like the majority of our audience has voted, so thank you very much for doing so. Now let's take a look at the results of the poll question. So 15% responded too many platforms to learn and use, 18% responded data is siloed and not easily used, 9% for data quality is unknown and may be suspect, 6% for data is difficult to interpret, and 53% responded all of the above. So thank you very much to our audience for voting on that poll question. And now, without further ado, I'd like to hand over the mic to our speakers, beginning with our moderator today from VivoSense, Dudley Tabakin. You may begin when ready.
Thank you, Aisha. And welcome everyone to our panel today. We'll be having a panel discussion, coffee chat, so things should be open, and we'll be freely discussing during this talk. Aisha, can you take me to the next slide? All right, so this is just an introduction to VivoSense. VivoSense develops and validates novel digital endpoints for the delivery in regulated clinical trials. That was introduced earlier. We do this in using multiple different directions. First of all, we can advise in the selection of sensors, wearable sensors that meet the study needs. We have more than 13 years of experience collecting, analyzing, and cleaning high-resolution wearable and sensor data, so we are well experienced in this. We're also able to harmonize data from different, for the development and validation of novel digital measures, able to incorporate data from different devices, integrate them, synchronize them, and bring this all together to provide context to the measures that we're deriving. And we also do this within a full white box end-to-end service, providing the services from data selection, assisting with protocol development, collecting the data, analyzing the data, and delivering the results to our sponsors, to the customers that we have, to deliver those further on to regulatory authorities in the industry. And next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we have many years of experience, more than 13 years experience. We've worked in clinical trials in more than 30 countries, and we've integrated more than 70 sensors throughout our history. That means we've had a lot of experience. We know how to do this, and we're ready to help other companies do the same. Next slide, please, Nisha. So this is a very busy slide, and I don't mean to go through any of this in detail. But digital measured success to us means many things and has many components, starting with how meaningful the measures are to the patients and clinically. And then we have protocol design or designing to use a wearable sensor in a study, the sensor selection itself, the software or platform that then delivers the data, the operational clinical operation aspects, the data processing, data cleaning. These are all important aspects of delivering a digital measure in the clinical trial. And today, during our discussion, we're going to delve into some of this and ask some pressing or trying questions. Next slide, please.
All right, so before we head into the panel discussion, we have another poll question for our audience to participate in, and I'm going to launch that right now, so it should be appearing on your screen. And let's take a look at this poll question, and this question is asking, what are the major challenges in data integration context to delivering trusted digital measures in clinical trials? And the option choices that you may choose from include integration of sensor data with ePro, eCOA, internal clinical trial, eTMF, CTMS, IT, EDC systems, interpreting and integrating results from different sensors or studies across a common therapeutic area, for example, ADHD, or regulatory and operational concerns for data integrity. Once again, the question is, what are the major challenges in data integration or context to delivering trusted digital measures in clinical trials? So please take a moment to submit your vote for this question. Once again, we greatly appreciate your participation. And I can see that the votes are coming in, so thank you once again. And I'll just give our audience a few more moments to get their votes in before I close up the poll and share the results. Once again, the question is, what are the major challenges in data integration or context to delivering trusted digital measures in clinical trials? Okay, I see that most of our audience has voted, so thank you very much for doing so, and let's go ahead and take a look at the results of the poll. All right, so 16% responded that a major challenge is integration of sensor data with ePro, eCOA. 16% also said internal clinical trial, eTMF, CTMS, IT, and EDC systems. 29% responded interpreting and integrating results from different sensors or studies across a common therapeutic area was a major challenge. And 39% responded regulatory and operational concerns for data integrity is a big challenge. Once again, thank you very much to our audience for participating in that poll question. And now I'm going to hand it back to our panelists for the discussion.
Thank you, Aisha. I'll ask our panelists to turn on their cameras. Okay. All right. Thank you, guys, and welcome. I'm excited to have this conversation today. We're going to expand on some of these points that we've already been polled on, or that we've already sent a poll on, and I have some other questions for you, and let's keep it open and fun. So let's start with the poll questions we just read. On that first poll question, we're asking about the limitations of current DHTs, and I think what stood out for me in that poll question was that the highest rated was that data was siloed and difficult to use. I'm going to start with Anders here. I think, Anders, what do you think of that poll question and some of the thoughts that came out of there? Do you have further thoughts on that?
Yeah, but it's interesting, and I think siloed is always a challenge, and siloed can be vertical and horizontal in different ways. So I think that being, I'm sure we will talk more about it later on, this kind of standards and openness will probably solve quite a lot of these kind of siloed issues we have when we're trying to do things. But also, I think another topic we will touch on is the collaboration or cooperation between different systems or providers or stakeholders would probably also kind of open up these type of silos.
Yeah, I think following on data silos was too many platforms to learn to use. And Stan, could you comment on that? I think, Anders, you just mentioned that, but Stan, could you comment on that and how that may be a problem from the pharmaceutical sponsor side?
Yeah, thank you, Dudley. I think from not only from a pharma side, I think it's really where people, of course, struggle with, but from a also side perspective, correct? Multiple platforms that they need to adhere to, that they need to educate to, so that makes it quite complex for your trial as well as for adoptability and for the patients obviously as well. So it's a multitude, correct? I see indeed that's challenging for pharma, but also for the patient and for the site as well. Yeah.
So Deep, how do we take this concern for the sites and for the sponsors and alleviate that from the engineering and platform side?
I think from engineering and platform side, I think the responses were from the surveys were quite interesting. Data silos, I call them like sort of data islands. Data quality issues arise because data is not following good integrity standards. Data communication between parties is not standardized. While developing the platform, I think some of the aspects needs to be baked in early on. If we actually design the platforms for security, privacy, and integrity from the early on, then I think these challenges can be better addressed versus trying to do them later on as additions or enhancements in the platforms. So in order to make all this data flowing end to end, I feel like the data needs to be treated sort of as a money so that you can track it all the way. You can keep the quality records. You can actually share those with everybody who wants to see them. And the way we call this on our side is more about the data journeys. So data journeys needs to be properly defined and developed so that people or all the interested parties can get benefited from. So yeah, that would be something I think definitely would help in terms of platform developments.
Okay, and that does lead us to sort of the poll question, the top concern on poll question number 2, which was the regulatory concerns. And I know, Stan, you've had some thoughts on that, and so let me open that up to you.
Yeah, I was indeed happy to. I was. It was a confirmation, correct? When we were talking in our preparation calls about this topic and internally within our company, that's what we see. I think it's an area where we see that THT solutions, but also the vendors, of course, providing the solutions, often need to align more to the pharma and biotech needs, and especially when you're adopting clinical trial setting, correct? And then I'm more referring to regulatory compliance of the vendor quality management system and also the processes for GCP. We see. I think each of us saw during after COVID and due to decentralized clinical trials, we saw a booming of all kind of digital innovation, let's say, and finally we were able to use it. Regulators were fully supporting it, but often what we see is the developments are not done with the regulatory GXP environment in mind, and it's more as an afterthought often. And we really need to think as compliance to regulations, GCP or other regulations. You mentioned security, cybersecurity is another one, correct? Or the patient GDPR, etc. But we need to think about it as a priority and not as an afterthought. And yeah, that's really crucial. And we see that a lot of vendors and solutions in the market that are top-notch from an innovation perspective, that are lacking that, and are also sometimes lacking people in those organizations with with a limited awareness and expertise of what it means to run clinical trials, and that's really crucial. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And Stan,
if you don't mind, just to go back to this silo question, it's maybe adding a bit to it, is that we talked about it as well, is that silos is like the opposite to integration. So, and then if you have these projects, you need to design very early on where you do the integration of what data. So you can have integration at the edge, you can have it in the systems. So there's so many places where integration can happen to kind of cross over these different silos. So it's back to this, is trying to find the right place to do the right integration.
Yeah, and also if you think about integration, Anders, also, and we do that often in our organization, is also again integration versus regulation is trial oversight, correct? We work with a lot of partners, and especially in this space, partner ecosystem is again crucial, correct, in the digital innovation space. And then it's very important to have still trial oversight of everything that's happening constantly, and real near real-time access to your data, correct? Even if you work with partners, to have a constant flow of the data, not monthly, not weekly, but almost have a daily synchronization of your data flowing in both directions, correct? To still have a traceability of your trial oversight, and that you can prove that also again back to the authorities, correct, at the end. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And from the Sony side, how do you address that? I mean, you have a platform, you're collecting data with the M-Safety device.
Yeah, so it's really the world platform. So what we have taken to market is more what I would call an open platform. So you can do the integration on the edge, where using the device that the end user, the study participant, is using, to use that as the communication hub of collecting all data from medical devices or from other home sensor or other things, and that act as the place where some of the integration of data happens. And then in the other end of this platform is that we so to say provide that data to whoever can do more integration of more aspects that you are need of in a clinical trial study. So there is always one system cannot do everything. So that's very important to have that kind of integration point, like in the case of VivaSense, that you take this data and make some good use out of it.
Yeah, and I was going to know that on our VivaSense side, we are developing that integration part. Is critical to the work we do. So Sandeep, I don't know if you want to jump in with any thoughts on how we go about planning for that.
Yeah, I think these all discussions are coming together, and when we use the word platform, I think this is all started making sense, because the platform word itself tells you it should allow these different use cases by design, and not able to just cater to a specific use case and constrain itself, because then there are multiple parties involved. So if we are building the platform, we are cognizant of, we're going to work with sensor endpoints, we're going to work with actually pharma on the other side looking at our data. We're going to look at actually our own science and our own operations teams who are going to work on that data. So in order to allow all those integrations, we kind of think data a bit differently, and we try to maintain that integrity all the way when it actually reaches to the other end, and making sure that we allow that insights to whoever actually wants to look into that data in order to meet the compliance standards, and also make sure like that's easy enough for them to work with our platforms. Because if the simplicity aspects are not properly considered, then they kind of defeats the purpose of use of the platforms to solve these problems. So the way we look at it is like try to solve these problems in a way that it serves the end goal usually the sponsor has in mind, to make sure like those goals are met. So yeah, it's great to see how the surveys has been responded and how these things are coming together.
Right. Okay, I think we can move on, because I wanted to talk about collaboration. And Sandeep, you just brought this up. You know, we've got the pharmaceutical sponsor, you've got the sensor vendor, analytics companies like VivaSense, and then of course you've got your regulatory authorities that you also need to bring in. So how important is this collaboration? How do we move forward with this collaboration? I know there are some programs out there. DIME, we know about CDISC. Stan, you maybe can talk about that a little bit. And as you mentioned, some as well. You know, how do we move forward with these collaborations? Is this the right path? How do we get it together? and move forward. Anders, I think you can start there.
Well, collaboration is definitely necessary to get this to work at all. And I think back to your second poll question is that regulatory is often the one that is actually keeping us back from doing a well integrated collaboration, because it requires us to think about so many aspects of how you deal with the system, the data quality and everything. So I think the collaboration around the regulatory aspects of things needs to be much more addressed early on. And back to Sten.
Sten, maybe,
No, I think it's
go ahead.
No, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you, Dudley.
No, go ahead.
No, I think you're spot on, Anders. I mean, and we're often, I wouldn't say afraid of the regulators, but we, especially in this space, I think they're eager also to develop this space further. Correct? There is a clear interest from the regulators on all sides. Correct? US, FDA, EMA, everyone has announced that they're really eager to drive this field forward. Does that mean that there is real clear guidances? No, probably not. That there is still gray zones, and they're together with the industry trying to find the right balance, correct, and to create those guidelines that can help our industry. So it's important, even if you're in an exploratory setting, correct, and you're moving very early on from a natural history study or to a phase 1B, etc. People, I think, or we in a pharmaceutical setting, we often wait too, or in the past, we waited too long to involve the regulators. And I think they're very eager to be on that journey together with you as a pharmaceutical company or a biotech company like us. So it's kind of a matter of involving them quite early on, as early as you can, so that you get input from them and that you can get that reaction correct and that they feel really part of that journey. Then the acceptance or the chances for acceptance at the end will be way higher. Yeah? That's very important, I think. Yeah. That towards the regulators, of course, and then as you mentioned, it's not only the regulatory setting. That's why I'm here today, also with you guys on the phone, is to collaborate, correct, with peers in the industry, and why we also reached out to VivoSense to see if we could join forces or strengthen each other's let's say values and strengths that we have in the company, because you can't do this on your own, correct, as a company, and we are also not a large pharmaceutical company who has like tens of people on the digital endpoint topic or DHT. We are, everyone is like running ahead full speed for getting the trials delivered. So that's why I think why we also reach out to partners in the industry like VivoSense and others to collaborate and to get quicker to the end result and with all taking everything in mind.
Yeah, and I'll add from the VivoSense side. I think it's important for us to have partners like Sony, like Argenx, because that is how we advance digital measures. And I will reiterate, Stan, your point about the regulatory or regulators. They have guidance, but not necessarily direction. And so, the collaboration has to start early with them, but also with the sponsors and the analytics and everything moving forward together to produce the packages that will move to approval.
And we talked about in the preparation that you emphasized the whole thing about keeping this in mind already from phase 1 studies all the way up to phase 4. Can you talk a bit more about that?
Well, I think it's very crucial. We are doing a lot in the exploratory setting. Like many pharmaceutical companies and biotechs are in this field really in the exploratory. Correct? Not many have been doing it in a regulatory. Can you still see me?
We lost you there. We can hear you.
Okay. Can you still hear me? Okay, perfect. That's already one. Let me try to bring up my camera again. Yeah, okay, thank you. So I was mentioning that that indeed a lot of companies are working on exploratory, correct? But you need to, what we're trying also now to establish and developing frameworks also internally, and that's really from our leadership, being requested to be entrepreneurs, correct, and to be part of the company growth and own development of the company at Argenix. And we are being asked, correct, develop a roadmap, develop a framework to start thinking early on, have a clear strategy. How are we, even if you're not having a clear view on that this will become a digital endpoint at the end, or maybe you're even not yet sure whether you're going to submit it to the authority eventually, but still you need to have that mindset from the start, because then you have the traceability, you think about auditability, you think about all the aspects you need to do from a regulator. So then if you would 1 year down the road really see a signal in your data and want to use that data, then at least you can use everything that you collected already and start working already for your regulatory submission, and you don't need to go back and redo the entire thing because you were too much in an exploratory mindset, correct, and have not done it the right way, let's say. So that is what we try to really put forward.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Good points.
Great. I wanted to move on and talk a little bit about standards. Standards are being developed. I'm not sure that they're fully developed yet, but we're on our path. So I wanted to maybe talk about that a little bit, and Stan, maybe a little bit about CDISC, if you'd like to talk about that. Maybe we can start there, because I think standards are important in order for us to be able to deliver the data in the right way and to have the data integrity needed in clinical trials.
Yeah. So I'm part already, I think, 8 years of the CDISC European Committee, and of course we are also trying to be a group again with multiple colleagues from multiple companies, technology companies, biotech, CROs, and everything, and we are helping people in Europe, especially with questions they have that they are raising around standards. But also we are organizing the European Committee, the European conference, which is soon going to happen, by the way, in Berlin. So if people have not registered, please do so, because we have a digital health technology stream as well with nice presentations. When talking with CDISC as an institution, we also understand that at the moment, because every company is a bit struggling, we as well, correct? Like how do we submit the data, then eventually how do we format the data? There is not really a right standard. Everyone is a bit exploring on their own and creating their custom domains, let's say. So we know that there is a work stream going to happen. CDISC will be more presenting on that at CDISC conference, but they're going to join forces with DIME to really work on this, and the coming year really put people together to hopefully develop standards around this, and then hopefully also get input from the regulatory authorities, and then eventually that will become a standard under CDISC umbrella as well. So I think that is excited news that will come our way. It's not there, so today I think we are all trying to actively contribute, but it's work in progress, I would say. Yeah, definitely.
Okay. And Sandeep, from that perspective, with our platform or the way we think about development, how do we think about standards that are required?
I'll take a bit different spin on this. What Stan said, from engineering point of view, try to understand the meaning behind the standards first, because there are a lot of different standards out there, and then there are a few key things definitely you want to comply. But from engineering side, we ask questions: what is the purpose of this standard really? What's trying to achieve? And then once you understand what motivation behind that standard, try to translate that motivation into the technical design. The things like when they call about, oh, the unauthorized use of data should not be allowed, so on and so forth. What does that mean for engineering is like finding the right data stores that provides encryption at rest. They actually provide data redundancy by design. They actually provide the access control as a mechanism of even accessing the data inherently versus you build something on top of it. So the way I see these standards, and to make sure like we comply with them, that we design for them from early on. We make sure like the platforms are designed for them. And a lot of these key asks from standards are actually met when the implementation is actually out there in the platform itself. So that whenever I think we have to make sure we are compliant or not, we just go through our design and say, yes, it is actually being compliant. It's very straightforward to see that, versus trying to actually go back and figure out where all these things are falling when we design this platform. So that's the side of approach we take. Usually we try to design our platform by certain key principles like security by design, privacy by design, things like that. But yeah, it is very interesting to see how different standards come together and kind of creates a challenge for engineering teams to make sure like we all meet these standards and still make our platforms as simple to use, as easy to design, as fast you can bring it to the market. So there's a very tight balance with all those things. So to your earlier point, I would say just, yeah, I think it's collaboration. So understanding from all the parties is quite important so that all these balances can be done in a very effective and economical way, so it doesn't defeat the purpose of co-creation. So that's something is definitely on our mind all the time. Back to you, Dudley.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the good points, and I think again goes back to designing from the start, right? Thinking about these things from the start. You can't bring them in later on, whether it be standards or data integrity or security, and we'll talk next about security and privacy. Yeah, you have to be thinking about these things when you start developing the platform, the study, the sensor, whatever DHT component you need. So let's talk a bit about data security and privacy. And as I know in our preparation, you brought this up as a top of mind concern, or not concern, but top of mind thought. So I'm going to let you start there. Okay. With Sony, why it's top of mind for Sony? And
well, I mean, it's I honestly think that every company that is designing some sort of technology that is supposed to communicate, and especially dealing with some sort of health information or sensitive information, have to have cybersecurity in mind all the time. And I think what is interesting to see, being based in Europe, is that Europe, they came out with the GDPR, and that have some sort of changed quite a bit how we think about how we deal with personal data. And now we see that the EU also are looking into a Cyber Resilience Act, which will force IoT or edge technology like DHT and so on to really from start think about cybersecurity from day one, and how that device being used in a lot of different settings needs to be designed from day one so it can be protected from malicious use or being used for different kind of cyber attacks and so on. And that will be yet another thing that, beyond this kind of regulatory aspect or from a medical device perspective, that will add yet another thing into what do you need to consider when you design your technology. Mm-hmm. And of course, that I wouldn't say it will slow down innovation, because I don't think it's possible to slow down innovation, but I think it requires a different competence when you think about it. And going back into a conservative market like clinical trial and so on, where you really want to trust technology and trust whatever equipment you use, it will be yet another thing that needs to go into when they design the studies. And I'm sure it will be coming to US as well, either from FDA or from some NSA or someone that will actually be concerned about cybersecurity.
And I think if I can jump in here, Dudley, I think we see always every week in the news, correct, attacks, and it's really booming. I mean, it's not good, of course, but it's what it is, correct. We need really to change our thinking. We have been talking as an industry, I think, long about this potential problem that there would arise, and now we see it happening almost every week. And to be very frank and honest, we also just had an attack to one of our partners. So that's really having big implications. So much time loss is correct. I mean, how many meetings I had the past weeks about a certain topic that I could spend in another mean. So it's really crucial what Anders was saying. Now we see, I mean, not just quality by design to the end user, to the adoptability by the end user or size, but also the security, correct? And sometimes we see that also our clinical teams or medics or medical or science, they see something in industry that they could potentially apply, but it's extremely academic, correct, in nature. And they get really fascinated, and they get very excited, and they want this immediately in a new study that is being designed, and this is exactly what they're going to measure and what they need to measure. But it doesn't have the security restrictions. It doesn't have the GCP rules. It's not certified sensor or wearable. So how do we deal with that, correct? That's often a struggle. You do want the innovation as soon as possible, and you see the need from a patient perspective, collecting maybe the data you really need, but it's not secure, it's not certified, you will run into problems. So that balance is of course not always easy to make. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that brings us back to that. You used the word trust, Anders, and that's exactly it. You know, you have to have this in order for the measures to be trusted, you know, in the industry, and so that they can be used as primary endpoints, and actually for drug development, you know, to make decisions in drug development. And you know, we got to get there. We're certainly working to get there. So let's talk about this trust. And I think one of the things that we believe at VivoSense that will bring trust is visibility into the data flow, into the analysis, into the results. So I'm going to start with Sandeep here, but how do we build that trust? By giving visibility into this data flow. How do we build that? What does that look like from your perspective?
Again, sort of looking from an engineering lens here. But overall, I think, yeah, building trust takes time because we all learn together. And that's sort of a process, I feel like. So having right partners in the mix who help you to build that trust is also important because trust actually flows both ways. You trust somebody, that means you're also willing to trust the other parties too. So in the transparency setting, I think the terms of engagement early on are important because when you provide a data transparency, you need to first define what the data might look like. What are the different ways you want to share that data? What are the different steps in that journey? And in order to build that trust, you need to provide the right objective evidence that integrity of the data is always been maintained. In order to do that, I think it's quite important to understand what are the different interests and what are the different key qualities of that data that needs to be maintained along the way. So we do kind of map these data journeys by keeping those things in my mind, in the mind of the design, and also trying to bring a third party sort of an audit and stuff like that to the table too, so that I think it is kind of a balance. So it's not just we are looking all these things through our own lenses, but we do bring actually to build trust is that, okay, let's go through third-party security audits. Let's get an audited on our own to find out what are the different security measures that we are actually putting in place. Are they enough? Because security and technology actually go hand in hand. Things are evolving every day. And if you're not able to stay on that edge, there's a high chance that your security might be compromised. So in order to have that vigilance, engaging right partners from outside to review your stuff on a periodic basis is quite important. I think that's one of the angles we also explore all the time as a practice in our quality management system. Yeah.
Thanks, Sandeep. And Stan, I think you know, from the pharmaceutical sponsor side, what do you need to see with the data flow? What is like critical? We must be able to see this in order to trust the measures coming from the platform.
Yeah, and I think one thing that Sandeep was saying was extremely important is audits. We have even changed some of our processes where we were doing audits later on only, you know, in our qualification process, and then figured out that we were running into problems with some of the vendors later on. So doing an audit, like Sandeep was saying, is it's maybe again heavy stuff. Although if you have a process in place that you do that can quickly act, that can go fairly quickly in the overall process when you partner with people. So that's one step, I think. We have a complete list that we are now adding to, that we say, hey, we really need to think about this and this and this. That's part of that trust, correct? Creating trust. And we know one thing that is also important and why we're collaborating also at Dudley is that we know that none of the vendors in the market, or most of the vendors in the market, are technology vendors that will fit all the boxes, correct? And especially in an innovative kind of setting. But it's sometimes also knowing what the gaps are and closing them together. That is important, correct? It's also building that relationship. So not just saying like, oh, you don't fit all the boxes, we'll go to another vendor, correct? No, because at the end of the day, we'll not meet maybe no vendor will appear anymore if you need to have all the boxes. So it's a collaboration aspect to build that trust. And then with regards to the data, yeah, visibility, is that it is not a black box, the platform. I was talking earlier about having regular data flowing from the wearable, from the sensor, not like within a month or every 2 months, but no, regular data, having algorithms running on there that immediately trigger if you're out of compliance or if the patient is not wearing the wearable. But also from the vendor side to us, I was talking about the trial oversight, correct? Also regular data feeds that maybe we don't minusculely go into the same data like our partners, but at least from a high level perspective, we're looking at trends, we're looking at maybe outliers, to just get a comfortable feeling of your data correct, that eventually you might be getting into the interims or safety DSMBs or whatever to your submissions that you're doing, but that you can already have checkpoints, that you don't wait till the end, of course.
Yeah, and I think that's critical from our perspective. That's how we think about it. It needs to be all along the way. It needs to be checks on the data. How you have like quality.
And maybe one thing I didn't mention, but if you're early on doing validity with maybe something that you do on site, correct? So yes, you can collect it through a wearable or through a sensor, but maybe you can in parallel do a kind of a visit at a hospital with another device that gives you also measurements to do comparisons, correct? And have that analytical validity in what you're measuring by sensor, and maybe further down in the road with the rest of the phases of your trial, maybe then you don't do it anymore at the site, but that you very early on have that benchmark data, correct, that you can prove to the authorities later on that it's okay that you only did a remote monitoring through your sensor, because initially you did already site assessments that you could compare and you could see that you got equal result or even better result through the remote sensor monitoring, correct, than through maybe an assessment at site with another device.
Yes, for sure. All right, I know we could probably continue for another couple of hours, but we are coming towards the end. So I'm going to ask one final question, and then hopefully we'll open it up to another poll and some questions from the audience. Maybe we can answer. So some of us have existing platforms for digital health technologies, for wearable sensors. Some of us are using them. What does the panel think about? What is the one feature that we must add now or must be added? Let's try and do this in 2 sentences. And I'll start with Anders.
Thank you. Well, and I will do it a bit simple for myself, and then touching on my cybersecurity aspect. I think single sign-on at home, so anyone participating in study can kind of enter data, annotation, and everything using a single sign-on biometrical, so we know that the data actually coming from the right person at the right time and in the right context, and that would be a fantastic feature, I would think.
Okay, Sandeep.
I would take a little bit broader term. I would say a simplicity of the platform as you work with so many different parties. And it is, as we said, co-creation, right? It's a game of co-creation. So how do you make things simple? And that simplicity actually kind of enables a lot of different things and a lot of different partners that you work with. So yeah, I'll say, and single sign-on and things actually would fall into that. But I think, yeah, simplicity is a broader term, but I would say that's something is quite important for the platform.
Okay, and Stan?
I would maybe choose something that is less sexy, maybe, but a strong mark for validation. I think, again, getting back that ultimately, if you want to use the data to regulatory authorities later on, that it can support your approval, and of course that you're using also devices that have been cleared by regulatory bodies, so that you can use them as well. Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. Aisha, opening up to the last poll and then questions.
Yep, absolutely. So we have a final poll question before we head into the Q&A session with our speakers. And that poll question should be appearing on your screen right now. All right, so let's take a look at this poll. And the question is asking, what is the most important feature of a trusted wearable sensor platforming clinical trials? And the answer choices that you have are regulatory compliance, seamless integration with non-wearable data sets, DHT data quality, or data visualization and reporting. And once again, the question is, what is the most important feature of a trusted wearable sensor platforming clinical trials? So please take a moment to submit your vote for this question, and then we'll take a look at the results in just a few moments. All right, I can see that the votes are indeed coming in. So thank you very much to our audience for participating. We do greatly appreciate it. And yeah, I'll just give everybody a few more seconds to get in their votes before I close up the poll. Once again, the question is, what is the most important feature of a trusted wearable sensor platforming clinical trials? All right, it looks like most of our audience has voted, so thank you very much for doing so. Now let's take a look at the results. So 52% replied or voted for regulatory compliance, 10% for seamless integration with non-wearable data sets, 19% responded DHT data quality, 10% chose data visualization and reporting, and 10% study management. Sorry, I forgot the last option there, study management efficiency and timely data. So thank you very much once again to our audience for voting on this poll question. All right, and now we're heading into the Q&A session with our panelists, and Dudley, I'll turn it back to you to take some audience questions.
Yes, I'm happy to take some audience questions. In the meantime, I thought that on that poll, of course, regulatory compliance is critical. We've heard all about that. I was interested, though, how data study management trials operations had a lower percent, 10%. I think that is a difficult piece that often gets overlooked in the clinical trial delivery. You know, it can sound easy. I just put on a wrist-worn device, I put on a watch, I get the data, and then it's very easy. There's no management. However, as we all know, and I think Anders, especially at Sony, you can imagine there's a lot of complexity around getting that data into the system and monitoring everything and being able to report accurately. So maybe we talk about that. Yeah.
Now, and just to add to that is that I think that more data need to be much more annotated to get a better kind of reusability going forward. So the more annotation we have about data points being collected, like at home or wherever, if you better understand the context of how that was collected and in what situation that data was provided, then the data becomes much more reusable going forward, and you can make other conclusion out of the same data set that you have. So yeah, so I think that operational aspect is quite complex.
Yeah, I really like, Anders, what you're saying about the context of use and where it was, and the metadata around the data. We had a big workshop earlier this week, actually, at our company, and that topic, because it was with multiple people, preclinical, clinical, name it, and end-to-end, and that topic came up several times, correct? How can we leverage the data better that we are generating across and over the years and over the months, and in order to do that, you need to have that, correct, that you know for what reason was it collected, how was it collected at the moment, etc. Yeah, exactly.
And especially when you mix between healthcare professionals and study participants generating, let's say, blood pressure, you need to know if it was self-collected or if it's actually done by a professional, and in what context were they sitting down, were they lying down, were they actually came in from a run and then took the blood pressure and so. So all this kind of annotation will be very important to reuse the data.
Yeah.
That is, I think that's a quite important aspect of that. I think that right annotations, because I think the wearable sensor data usually collected by the user. So if we get that information along with the data, it's extremely important to put a context around that data.
And something that we didn't talk about it today, but also very important. I saw it on one of your slides, Dudley, in the very beginning, where you had all the bubbles, is the meaningful aspects of health, correct? Like, is it what we're collecting here and what we're going to do? Does it really, will it at the end really matter to the patient, correct? And if you often that's overlooked, pharmaceutical companies will have something in the mind, they go for it, but we not always have like a full visibility on what the patient really wants or needs, and then we're focused on our product, of course. And then at the end, you really need to prove to the regulatory authorities that what you did was really meaningful for the patient. And so doing that at a very, very early stage, again, before you start collecting these wearable data and everything is really crucial and is often overlooked. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for the agreement. Do we have any questions? Sorry, I don't know. I hope I didn't miss anyone who wanted to ask a question. Okay.
All right, I think we are heading towards the end of the webinar, and I'd like to thank once again our panelists for today for that very insightful presentation and discussion. If the panelists couldn't attend to your questions, the team at VivoSense may follow up with you, or you may also direct any questions you have to the email address displayed on your screen there. Thank you everyone for participating in today's webinar. You will be receiving a follow-up email from XTalks with access to the recorded archive for this event. A survey window will be popping up on your screen. Your participation is appreciated as it will help us to improve on our webinars. In addition, I'm going to share a link in the chat box, and that link will take you to the recording for today's event. And you can also share that link with your colleagues so that when they register for the recording, they can also view it. So I do encourage you to do so. Now, please join us in thanking once again our speakers for today, Dudley Tabakin, Stan Rogiers, Anders Stromberg, and Senti Party for their time and insights today. We hope you found this webinar informative. On behalf of the team here at XTalks, thank you for joining us and see you next time. Have a great day, everyone, and thank you all once again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.